Okay, I just have a quick but serious question for book talk. How are you guys reading 60 to 100 books so far this year? The people who average like 8 books in a month, where does that time come from when you have a job and other responsibilities? Hello, my name is Seneca. Welcome to my casual book channel where I talk anything casual related to books. We are going to be casually reviewing all of the 8 books that I read in September, which never happens. I do not read 8 books in a month. According to Storygraph, which is the website for like book statistics, it takes me 10 days to read around a 400-page book. So on average, I'm reading like 3 to 5 books in a month. As a medium slow reader, it's a little bit hard for me to understand this pace. The only way that I could read 8 books is because I heavily relied on audiobooks. Like, if I did not have audiobooks, I would not have read 8 books in a month. And I kind of feel like some of you guys need to be honest about that too. I understand some people are just fast readers, okay? But it's like, even if you are a fast reader, like if you have like a job and like a life, how are we getting to that number? Before I get into listing all of the books, I want to list what I look for in a book is something that has implicit or explicit social commentary, a book that is thrilling, a book that has themes of grief because I feel very connected to that, a book that can make me laugh as much as it can make me cry. That one's a newer edition. And then there's something that I'm forgetting here, but like if we have most of those, I am going to be pretty content in that book. My favorite book ever is Demon Copperhead. It's the only, previous to this month, it was the only book that I've ever rated 5 stars, and I have a new 5-star. So that's exciting that I now have 2 5 stars. It's very rare to come by because I can't find a book that reaches all of those things that I'm looking for. So the books that I read this month, we're going to start off with The Fury by Alex Michaelides. I love Alex Michaelides. The Silent Patient was just one of the best books I've ever read, and I fear it just will never be topped because I just don't think that you can really recreate that level of a book, especially with that much hype that it got, and it was his debut. You're not doing better. I was so convinced of the second book that he came out with that I was going to love it as much as I loved The Silent Patient. That I bought it. Like, I am a strictly library user, but I told my husband to get me this book for Christmas, thinking this is going to be the second Silent Patient. Lo and behold, it is a 2-star. Fury is about this main character named Elliot, his really high-profile actress friend named Lana. Lana decides that she needs kind of like a weekend away from her life, so she plans this trip on her island, her own private island, with Elliot and her friends, and I believe her partner. Yeah, her partner. I think it's just a boyfriend. I don't think they're married. Are they married? I think they're married. Partner. And so they're secluded on this island, and things turn deadly. Something takes a turn to where somebody turns on somebody else, and you don't really know what the heck is going on. It's a classic whodunit, but it has this really crazy twist at the end that really left me like, ugh, Alex. You can tell through his writing that he has a strong passion for Greek mythology as well as psychology. And through listening, even it didn't really take that away. You could tell that he did kind of studies on narcissism, because I feel like as somebody who's kind of read up a little bit about narcissists, everything that I have been looking at really showed through what I was listening to. And I just appreciate the fact that you can tell he's very passionate about other things than just like putting a good story together. You know what I mean? Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng. This was a very introspective book that really tugged at your heart in a very tense way. This book centers around the death of this young girl and her family. It's mainly kind of the story of her family and how you can see the reasons why the death happened when it leads up to the death, because everything that is unsaid is this family's truth, and they're unable to speak on the truth because they simply don't have the language for it. This book is a classic literary fiction. It's not really too much of a mystery, but you are kind of wondering and having certain questions up until the end. The book is held in the 70s in Ohio. I think it's not Shaker Heights, but it might have been Shaker Heights. If it's not Shaker Heights, it's like a Shaker Heights-esque area. Celeste Ng also wrote The Little Fires Everywhere, which is also in Shaker Heights, which is why I might be getting it confused. But essentially it follows this mixed race family. The mother is white, the father is Asian. The social commentary in this book is so heavily in the character's thoughts, especially as the dad has a lot of trauma related to the fact that he never fit into the schools that he went to, because prior to, of course, them being in the 60s, he was growing up in times where he was like the only Asian kid at the school and everybody was really hateful towards him. So a lot of the things that he harbors, the things that he brings up, are just things that his kids are also feeling, but in a different way that they also do not say. His wife, Marilyn, is also a very interesting character in the way that she's kind of like this typical housewife, but had such bigger dreams and aspirations. But of course, at the time that she grew up, she wasn't able to explore them because she was constantly being told, you're gonna be a housewife. Like, why are you thinking about studying chemistry and biology? So there's just a lot in this book that is very introspective. If you're an introspective person, you're going to love this one, because I really loved it. It really sat with me and I gave it a 4. So then we have Heart Shark. Heart Shark is the telling of the first year of marriage between a wife and a husband, and essentially it captures what happens when your husband turns into a shark. Like, he literally turns into a shark. This book, although it is very magical and has very mythical themes, and it's not like a metaphor. It could be viewed as a metaphor for something, but his body transforms. I thought that it was going to be maybe like, oh, he turned into a shark, but that was just code for having a disease, a terminal illness. But no, he transforms into a shark. Some of these characters in the book are like other animals, and although it sounds a little bit ridiculous, a little bit crazy, it's actually such a strong concept for how you view your relationship to the changes that take place within somebody, especially as it relates to grief. If you are thinking about this in terms of grieving somebody because you lose them to an illness, which is what I did, I found it so much easier to connect with this story as it related to, like, if this was a telling of somebody who had cancer. Let's say he didn't actually turn into a shark. Let's say he developed a terminal illness. I just found it a lot easier to connect in that way, as opposed to him literally turning into a shark. So I give it a 3.5. I overall liked it. Then we have Loud by Miss Drew Afwalo. If you don't know Drew Afwalo, she is a TikToker. She goes off, I was going to say after, but she also goes off on very misogynistic men who just yap and kind of go on these typically unchecked rants against women, and she's pretty much the only one that'll check them in a very loud way. She wrote this book, and I think a lot of people think it's going to be like a kind of crash course on like modern feminism, but it's really not. It's kind of just telling of why she does what she does, a little bit of some history on specifically her relationship to feminism as a Samoan woman, as well as, a successful TikToker who's like grew her platform on calling out injustices. This book changed the way that I think. This book's premise is kind of simply really just about the fact that as a woman years ago, as well as in 2024, you're told, like how to be the most desirable, the most beautiful, the most intelligent, the most digestible. But like, what if you really just, at the end of the day, were somebody who was like loud and abrasive, and you went for what you want, even though it didn't really look like what you were told was like the vision of success as a woman? Anyway, I gave it a 4. It was amazing. I listened to it over audio. It was great. Also, Everything I Never Told You, I also listened to over audio. It was a 4. The Rachel Incident. This is the last audiobook that I listened to. 5 out of 5. Amazing book. The premise is a coming of age story of what happens when a college age girl has a crush on her closeted professor. So funny. Because it's a 5, it hit every single one of my things that I look for. It was I think I missed talking about introspection. It was introspective, it was thrilling, it made me laugh as much as it made me cry, and it had explicit social commentary. The book is set in Ireland. I can't remember. I think it was like in the mid 2000s, and it follows this girl named Rachel who, as I mentioned, has a crush on her professor. And it starts off really immature and kind of silly in the way that she's trying to like seduce her married professor, and she's not like intentionally trying to ruin anybody's life. She's just like a silly little girl who like falls into her fantasies. And then it goes into this very real story that follows her and her best friend James, James is like a very key person in the story. They kind of grow in friendship together. They go through a lot of things. They talk through gender identity, and then also gender identity in like 2008, which is a different time. And then also abortion. They talk really explicitly about abortion in Ireland, about how it was illegal at the time. And a character does have to go through all things related to working through needing an abortion, but that kind of being very contentious and very a difficult topic to navigate, in every sense, like mentally, physically, financially. But it was also incredibly funny. Like, listening to this through audio, I needed to do that because she has a very distinct Irish accent, which made it even funnier, I think. I haven't really taken a lot of Irish media. I think the only thing that I can remember and even note is watching Dairy Girls, and Dairy Girls is so funny. I think there's just something about the themes of self-deprecation in Dairy Girls, as well as the Rachel incident, that really, really clicks with me. I maybe need to look into more Irish media that is catered towards coming of age, because I think it really gets me in a very specific way. 5 out of 5. It was perfect. It was real, and I really appreciated the explicit social commentary of it. It was great. So The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store. This is the book that I read physically. I read this one and then 2 others. So I found this book because I was looking for another 5 out of 5, another Demon Copperhead, and I saw this under like recommendations for books similar to Demon Copperhead, and I was like, oh, this is gonna be it, because I'd also seen that this was the 2023 Barnes and Noble Book of the Year, so I was like, oh well, prestige. So I looked into this and I was like, oh, whatever, it sounds interesting. I thought it was gonna be like a mystery thriller. It's not. It's really heavy, intense, and a lot harder to digest than a thriller. So this starts off with a murder that happens in Chicken Hill in Pottstown, Pennsylvania. And the murder is really not important. It's on the first page. I think that kind of gets you hooked. And you don't find out about what happens with the murder until like the very, very end. But essentially, the book's focus is on the neighborhood in which the murder took place in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, on Chicken Hill. So we kind of go into the neighborhood and the characters who make up this neighborhood. It's a Black and Jewish specific neighborhood. So, and this is also held in the 1930s. So there's a lot of tension in every single spot of this. The main characters that this follows, the main characters that I liked the most were Chana. What the heck am I saying? So Chana and Moish, they inherited the Heaven and Earth grocery store, which is just a grocery store within this neighborhood. They're both young. I think that Chana was she Romanian? She's some sort of European, but Moish is Jewish. They start off kind of as a young couple that Moish is more so kind of wanting to get out of this neighborhood as a young Jewish person who also he runs this like theater. He wants to get out. He wants to like be more successful. He wants to not be defined by being in this Black and Jewish neighborhood. And as a young Jewish person, realizing like his social status in the world, he wants to kind of break out of that. But Chana, oh my God, Chana, being somebody who's like very deeply integrated into this community, and having this grocery store that she inherited is more so focused on just simply figuring out like how to not how to survive, but how to be in the community. She also has a bunch of health problems. There's a bunch of things that happen. There's a bunch of other characters that I could go into, but it kind of follows them mainly. And there's a bunch of other people that come into their life. There's this kid named Dodo who's deaf and dumb, and then also Black, and I think 12. He's like so young. He's like 12 years old. He gets kind of pseudo adopted into this family, but he's not supposed to be there because he's supposed to be, I think it's like a ward of the state. But it was really hard to follow his story because it's just so heavy and difficult, and God, okay. It was just really tense. Like, I kind of struggle with reading things specifically, like, as a Black person who follows literature, to read things previous to the 60s. There's not a lot of stories that like focus on joy. There's a lot of stories that focus on like racial tension and a lot of oppression. But I find that once you go past 60s, it's just a lot happier over there. And it just is, it's like, it can be difficult. It can wear on the soul. But this one, I really, really appreciate following and watching. So I gave it a 3.75. Then we have Middle of the Night by Mr. Riley Sager. Ooh, I have a lot of 4s. That's when I gave a 4. This was Riley Sager's most recent book that he came out with. Essentially, the premise is that 2 boys 30 years ago had a sleepover. The sleepover turns into a disappearance of one of the boys, and 30 years later, they're figuring out exactly what happened on that dreaded night. So this follows this kid named Ethan. Ethan, for years, has been tormented by the fact that his best friend has went missing. And so as the reader, you're kind of catching up with his own trauma and his own torment as to what the heck happened. And you're being introduced to all of these different neighbors that have kind of been around for this specific story and what has happened to the neighborhood and what has happened to Ethan. I just really I don't know what it is, but this book's, I don't feel like I really fully understood how a book could have like a specific atmosphere and a specific feel that the author can give you until I like sat down and I immediately felt like it had this like very eerie feeling to it. I don't know. Riley Sager books are just so, they're like a comfort read, even though they are thrillers and are designed to put you a little bit on edge. I don't know, there's something about his writing style that's so like easily digestible that I feel like it's like the classic like a reset book if I need to read a book. I highly recommend, give it 4. The Last Time I Lied, also by Mr. Riley Sager, which my friend gave to me for my birthday. She gave it to me as like a blind date read. This, if you if you watched the Pretty Little Liars series and loved it, you will love this book. This book is so reminiscent of like, okay, also if you read like The Click too. Riley Sager, I feel like so in his teenage girl drama bag, because this book is focused on a disappearance of 3 girls disappearing a long time ago with the summer camp. We now are in present day, where one of the girls who has lived through this, who had known that the 3 girls had escaped and was their roommate, we are seeing her perspective and her go back to this summer camp that has been revived after the disappearance had made it closed. So she's getting all this closure as to what the heck happened. It is interesting, the themes between Middle of the Night and The Last Time I Lied, because it's a disappearance and somebody's coming back a couple years later. Like, Riley? I know a couple years have passed between Last Time I Lied and Middle of the Night, but then there was also this one thing that happened in Last Time I Lied that was like verbatim, what the heck, not verbatim in the way that like the character carried it out differently, but it was like the same exact thing. Oh my God, if you read Last Time I Lied and Middle of the Night, I feel like you know what I'm talking about. Please let me know if you're picking up what I'm putting down. But it's just so interesting the way that authors like repeat themselves in very noticeable ways. But Middle of the Night was like a much more refined telling of like the we're coming back to this tragedy that I can't stop thinking about for decades trope, you know? What is that trope called? Because there has to be a quicker way to say that one. Nah, has to be a quicker way to say that one. Okay, so I gave The Last Time I Lied a 3. That is what I read in September. If you have read any of the books that I have, please let me know if you agree or disagree, or if you have any recommendations for me based off the things that like make my taste. Wherever you are, whoever you are, whatever you're doing, whatever time of day it is, I hope you have an amazing morning, afternoon, or night.